It's the Musers, the podcast Cowboys edition with your football friends, George Dunham and Bob Stern. Cowboys with a bye week and a trip to Las Vegas this coming Monday night to take on the Raiders. And usually the bye week is a time for a team to heal up, to refocus. In the Cowboys' case, work in some new players via trade. But, Bob, we had no idea this was in store for this team, and just the saddest of news late last week, and now they have to move forward with their season and somehow try to gather themselves to take this trip to play the Raiders, because late last week we know the story of Marshawn Kneeland tragically committing suicide, second-year defensive end from Western Michigan at the age of 24. The story is just sad beyond words, and we can talk about Marshawn, the player. Not that we knew him well, but I do remember this. There's so many things that have just stood out here in the last week. We both have kids. We both have sons. And I went to visit my 25-year-old son and my oldest son this past weekend. And, you know, I talked about this event with them, and I just we just kind of talked it out. Just, man, can you believe so young, and there's, this is somebody your age doing this, and, they've known some who've had their struggles in their 20s. And I don't know, just like anyone else, I've had this empty feeling, this pit in my stomach since the story broke. And that's just us on the periphery. You could only imagine what Cowboy players and coaches have been through since they heard the news last week.
Yeah, just on every level, it's awful, and even those of us in this position, so we're fairly removed from the locker room and from the roster and any sort of real friendship with most of the key people, in his inner circle, and it's heartbreaking for us, and maybe more so, it's awkward to even discuss at any sort of public level, like we know what they deal with, because we don't, and we know what life is like on the inside because we don't, and you're right, we both have sons of a certain age that match up with Marshawn in a sense that, as dads, as men, as guys who dabbled in athletics and just all of this, it's this constant discussion of man up. Let's see some spine. Let's see some toughness. Dig in when things get tough, and all of this. And unfortunately, that's great in theory, but it's not necessarily great in reality at all times to basically get us all to act like we're Iron Man, and nothing can hurt our armor, and nothing can get inside our head. And so, I know. I know this. The further we go as a society into, kind of connecting with people we don't know through like the online world, where they can get to us, and then we marvel at somebody like Kevin Durant who is online and wants to lash back at people who call him names, and we're like, well, what motivates somebody to do that? And the reality is, I don't think our brains and our exterior and our armor were made to be this connected. And part of that is a new awareness about like mental fragility, and the fact that it's okay to have feelings, even if you are a muscle-bound man who could probably win any personal fight that you come across in life. But sometimes it's the one between the ears, and what are you dealing with, and what's okay to admit before your bosses look at you differently because you're in a combat life, sort of, not to make these guys into soldiers, but just look at the other night. I was lucky enough to be on an NFL field in warm-ups, and you're just there at ground zero of what these guys do for a living, and you just marvel at what it must take, and the pain, and just everything these guys go through. And yeah, the payday's unbelievable, but the I don't know, the exterior it can be misleading, I guess is what I'm
Yeah.
saying, George, because inside we're all just trying to make a path and take care of those that we love, and unfortunately it takes moments like this for us to recognize that our fellow man is in fact a fellow man who is not invincible in life. Does that
Yeah.
make
We're
sense?
all we're all very fragile. We're all partly broken.
Yeah,
You know, we all have our problems, and
we all just want
we
to be
keep.
loved and accepted, right?
Yeah, that's all we want. And yeah, just a few other things that I know you can relate to. I just remember when he was drafted, and I don't keep up with the board like you do, but for some reason this stands out in my head. I remember talking to a Cowboy scout that we both know and have known for a long time, and he was really excited about Marshawn Kneeland. You know,
Yeah,
uh, his arrow was up. He scored well at the combine, and if you look back at his numbers at Western Michigan, they weren't spectacular, but they just his body type, his personality, they really thought they had found someone here in the second round, you know, that
that's
maybe
right.
had first round talent. And I remember being excited. I didn't even know the kid at the time, but I remember thinking, wow, wouldn't it be great if he went from Western Michigan and, you know, he's about to start a Pro Bowl career with the Cowboys, and you know, all we know is what we've seen the last year and a half, and it's just you know, there's that part of it that whether you're playing football or whether you're doing, you know, research, whatever your job is, it shouldn't end at 24. There's so much
That's right.
life, you know, ahead of you, and it just that stayed with me all week.
Yeah, yeah, and it's the human hurdle, or excuse me, maybe the bar that we're all trying to get to in life as feeling like we're successful, and there are different ways to measure that, but of course the ultimate dream for so many of us was to be a pro and to be good enough at a game that we could get to professional athletics and be the best of the best of the best, and with that comes the ability to be rich, and with that becomes the ability to be famous, and as like high school kids that sounds like the trifecta of everything you want in life is, wow, I'll be an elite athlete who is both rich and famous, and that will be my Valhalla. I will never ask for anything else, and unfortunately, with that comes an enormous burden of I don't know, that can, I suppose, mess with you, where the amount of money in your bank does not fulfill you at all, and the fact that people want your autograph does not fulfill you, and just, again, I'm from the age, and you are too, George, where even mental fragility is it elicits an eye roll, right?
Yeah,
And I'm happy that our sons are in a universe where it's okay not to be okay. That's the amazing phrase that one of these companies came up with to sort of describe the mental battle that everybody fights, no matter who they are, no matter how famous they are, no matter how successful they are. It's okay not to be okay, and to admit it, and to seek somebody to talk to, and just open up. And anyway, I think about him and what led Marshawn down this path, and I definitely think of how optimistic we were about his future, and probably how the Cowboys put out a heartbreaking video in the last day or two of just all of the fun times with Marshawn. And you even think about the bye week and the guys coming back into the facility, and we talked with Daryl Johnston on our radio show about the Cowboys dealing with it coming off a bye week, and maybe it's a good time to sort of get away, but at the same time, they have to attend a funeral probably,
mm,
and then they got to go back to work, and part of that is film study, and they're going to see Marshawn everywhere. The
yeah,
guy scored a touchdown 2 days before his death, and it's just, again, this franchise knows tragedy. We know that for sure, whether it be, Josh Brent, whether it be, Mark
Mark
Tuinei.
Tuinei. Yeah.
There's a long list of tragedy here, and of course in pro football the list gets really long, really fast, and we love what these guys do for us in terms of entertaining us every Sunday, and really we think about it every day. But it is a time like this where we're like, man, how do you even get up for the next game? How do you, I don't know. It's just, I'm happy we can talk about this, but I also recognize that the whole point is we won't find a satisfactory
No.
summation or result or conclusion of any of this. We will wonder for years what could have been done, and I hope everybody involved and everybody connected with him. I hope they don't blame themselves for too long, because I know that's probably the natural thing for friends to say. Why did I not see signs that Marshawn needed me? That sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, as we have both talked about on a radio station, the Ticket in Dallas this week, the Cowboys have hired some therapists to talk to players who have to talk their way through this on their own roster and their coaching staff. Between Brian Schottenheimer and Dak Prescott, I think they have a coach who loves his players and tries to relate to them, and they have a quarterback and they have a defensive tackle in Solomon Thomas who has been through this type of tragedy in their family. So they have that to draw on, and you hope in some way that can help these players forget about what they do on the field, but just in their headspace somehow start to make some sense of just this thing that's hard to deal with.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's staggering. I don't know. You'd like to hit pause and let everybody recover, but that isn't how the show works. You must go on, and there are games to play, and it's a tremendous bummer. Even today, George, I'm working on a project about like the Cowboys draft success, and you go through each year and say that was a good pick and that was a poor pick, and like, what do you do with this? What do you do with Marshawn Kneeland? I know he did not really fully break out yet, and there were high hopes for him, but even from a standpoint of just like evaluating a team's process of acquiring players, there's just no way to account for a young man deciding that he had enough of this world. And again, it's a great opportunity to talk to our sons and our daughters and just assure them that hey, I know you have hopes and dreams, and whether you achieve them or not, it's okay to tell those people in your life, like, man, I'm just going through it right now, and I need some help. And gosh, us parents would do anything, to
oh my gosh, yeah,
to try to assure our kids that it's going to be okay. Hang in there, So rough scene, man.
As a public service announcement, there is a suicide prevention line at 988, and to your point about talking to people, if you haven't called that family member in a while, whether they have, issues or not, or maybe a friend that you've had a falling out with, or you wonder about, man, I don't know, maybe make that call this week and say, hey, I was thinking about you. How you doing? And we need some more of that in this world of people trying to pick each other up and
no doubt
chop each other off at the knees.
And again, for people of that age, the idea that you've got to achieve a certain level or you're letting people down. Like I think, I know we send our kids off to college and we want to see them, do great in life. And
I think that may be the scariest moment as a parent. Worse than first day of kindergarten, worse than first day of high school. If your son or daughter is lucky enough to, have the motivation and the means to go to college, man, when you drop them off or they drive off, one of the two, it's just, oh my gosh, they're not under my roof anymore.
Yeah. And the takeaway from that, and we even go through this with our kiddos. I took a road trip with, my older son, just a couple days ago. And you even look for opportunities to say, look, man, I want you to chase your dreams, but really, I want your reality to just be that whatever you end up doing, know that you're going to be loved and know that nobody's going to be worried that you let anybody down. We just want like a full heart and, just feel like you're here for a reason, and you can find contentment in whatever you end up doing in life. It's like nobody's saying, man, this guy only did this, therefore, he kind of disappointed the family. Like nobody thinks that way. We just want, family and friends to just feel whatever they're doing, like the next sunny day is just a source of happiness, hopefully. So anyway, we'll remember Marshawn Kneeland for sure, and hopefully we can learn lessons from a horrible tragedy that we can apply to our kiddos and our brothers and our sons and our daughters and just everybody close to us. Stay connected and try to lift each other up. I think that's the takeaway, Georgie.
Amen to all of that, Bob. Well said. Okay, I want to talk about your trip because it wasn't just anywhere.
It wasn't.
At the Lambeau Field, for gosh sakes, and you saw a throwback game. I want to talk about that and something else that has happened in our area this past week that is truly phenomenal. What has happened the last 9 months to the basketball team in Dallas.
Yeah.
How that relates to the Cowboys. We're going to tie those things together coming up next on the Musers, the Podcast, Cowboys edition. It's the Musers, the Podcast, Cowboys edition. It's George and Bob. Cowboys and Raiders on Monday Night Football in Vegas. Bob's going to be there. Bob does nothing but just travel around and go to Monday night football games. This past Monday, you were just talking about a trip you made with your son, and it wasn't just any trip. It was a trip to Lambeau.
Yeah.
Bob grew up in Wisconsin, grew up a Packers fan. He got to Dallas as soon as he could and learned the ways of true greatness of the NFL. But that's where Bob grew up. And, we just did on the Musers, the podcast, our bucket list, and that is on mine. I've never been to Lambeau Field, but someday, Bob. So what was that like on Monday night? You've been there a zillion times, but
yeah.
What was Monday night's experience like? Cold weather, great matchup, defensive struggle, and you're there with your boy.
Yeah. No, it's I can't recommend enough the idea of building traditions with your growing up kids and whatever that means. Of course, I'm not the first to do a father-son trip, but this year I've got a couple boys who are of that college age, and I took my soccer son over to Liverpool so that we could watch our favorite team in person back in April, and that was delightful. And my older son, who's way more into the American football than the football. Well, he grew up a Packer fan. He was named after a Packer, of course. And so little Brett and I have been going to Lambeau. We've been going to Lambeau since he was tiny. And try to go every year. Probably don't successfully pull it off, but the Cowboys bye week allowed us to go back to Lambeau for Monday night against the Eagles, and it's truly a delight. And I'm so lucky, George, over the years to be able to not only do these trips, but then have connections in the game, including our mutual friend Troy Aikman. Helped with our connections, of course, and so we got to.
Hey, folks, let's pause just for. Bob knows Troy Aikman and got to hang out with him before the game.
Not as well as
that's amazing.
Not as well as Troy Aikman, but he's
that's not true.
He's a friend of our radio station, and he's been he's a great human. Just from personal experience, and he has played in enough Super Bowls that he could be above the fray here, but he also knows the thrill of a young man on his birthday getting to go out on the field and enjoy the pregame scene. So it was great. We had such a wonderful time, and then we got to see the Packers play ridiculously poor offensive football and improve the Cowboys draft pick position next April. So
yeah, there we go.
I'm sure everybody's excited about that. But yeah, now we thankfully late in the game did get to see a touchdown. That was fun.
Yay!
So no, honestly,
I love the game. By the way, I love every once
too.
in a while if you see two good defensive units.
Yeah,
and obviously the new parts in Philadelphia are helping them out, just like Micah Parsons has helped out
Right.
Green Bay. And man, I love it. There was some offensive. What's the right word? Just
Substandard
substandard
results,
offense. Okay, some of it was, but I thought a lot of that was great defense, and I loved it.
Well, and not only great defense, Georgie, but I think more importantly, the offenses were terrified of risking anything because they know what happens if you trifle with Jalen Carter, Micah Parsons, the stars in this game. And this is the thing that I really think we miss as fans sometimes, is that having guys on your defense that absolutely terrify the opponent are often worth far more than the actual statistics that player can get on his own. Now, that's difficult to measure, especially when it comes to a guy wanting a contract. And I know, like, the Micah Parsons dialogue is a one that's a bit of a beatdown for people. But I do think when you watch the Packers play the Eagles, I think you saw both offenses saying, we absolutely have to be careful because of these players, and let's make the other team make more mistakes, right? Let's make the other team totally screw up the game first and turn the ball over to us. And because of that, I think both offenses didn't really try a whole lot, and that made it pretty fun.
So if I ever go to Lambeau, this is the time to go, isn't it? November, before it gets really cold where you're miserable in December or January, but not 80 degrees in September. Was that not the optimal time to go when you went?
Well, it was pretty cold, Georgie.
Yeah,
cold? Yeah. No. I'll tell you what. I've gone to Lambeau Field for games, I would guess by now about 30 times in my life, and I never got there until I was an adult because my parents had no idea how to get us into Lambeau. So one of the very first things I did when I got a job in life was I pretty much promised myself, now I'm going to make up for lost time and go as often as possible. So, but I've always been working, and I've always been working, thankfully, covering the NFL. And so usually of those 30 times to Lambeau, let's say, I bet you 25 of them have been in December because that corresponds with going home for Christmas. And every year I get older, so every year I feel like it gets colder. And I think 25-year-old me would hope that 53-year-old me would never start turning into an old person that just wants to watch the game by the fire in my living room. But I have to report.
It's sounding better and better, isn't it?
I have to report every year it gets colder, even if the temperature stays the same. I get softer. I've lived in North Texas. I've had a good life, and I just don't want to be that cold. And so I remember when the hard line went up there for Mike McCarthy's return to Lambeau. I want to say that was roughly week 10 or 11 or 12, and it was roughly the middle of November. And I was telling Corby and Davey and Mino that, hey, it's not going to be that bad. You're not going in December or January. And, George, it was that bad. It was so cold, partly because I think you gear up in December and January that you have to dress like an Eskimo. And in November, you're like, you know what, maybe a sweatshirt and then a hoodie and then a nice jacket or something like that will be enough. And the wind, and it's just, no, it's not enough. And so this time we are driving up, and the pregame show is saying this looks like it will be one of the coldest games this early in the winter that we've had at Lambeau. And it was projected to be the low 20s for much of the night. I got to tell you, I think I'm so old and soft now that I so over-prepared. I had 2 pairs of pants. I had 3 pairs of socks. I had the little heaters in, the the little thing, the hand warmers and the foot warmers. I had those put in there. I had so many layers on that I actually do think I outdressed the cold to a point where did not even put the gloves on in the second half. And so it was cold, but I was prepared this time. And I do think that's the key, especially for a bald person, is to make sure you do your part. And I would love to be there if Football Friends could ever get George to Lambeau. And I tell everybody that the true places, the true bucket list stadiums in our sports, usually they're worth the hype. And I think my trip to Fenway was everything I hoped it would be. My trip to South Bend to see Notre Dame was wonderful. And so these places get these reputations for a reason. They're, in the case of Lambeau, I think it's a bit like a football museum, but they'll actually play an NFL game while you're there, and you get caught up in the history and the college town atmosphere of Green Bay. I think I would recommend everybody goes to Lambeau. The thing I can't quite hash out in the conversation, George, is whether you should go when your team goes or if you should go as a neutral, because of course if you go when your team goes, then so much is about the result and so much is about are we going to play okay and are they going to be mad at me for wearing my team's colors? So if you go as a neutral, are you a cheesehead for a day, or are you just watching the game and you don't really even care what happens? You just want to be in the atmosphere. I think there's a lot of value in doing it that way. So I don't know.
See, I think I want to see a game that everyone's really charged up for, like the Bears or the Vikings coming to town, or the Lions, or
and I think
something that's got the fan base fired up about something.
The Eagles on Monday night, I think, was that game this year, the defending Super Bowl champs, and of course Green Bay was labeled as the team trying to get rid of the tush push, which I actually think that was league propaganda, because Green Bay is the only team without an owner that you could pin that on. So at the owners meeting, we could say, yeah, it's Green Bay's idea.
They got 1,000 owners, so let's put it on them.
But I fully expected Sirianni to call 43 tush pushes in a row just to be that kind of guy that I think he probably is. But in the end, full marks to the Eagles. The Eagles don't care. They're the team right now that's got enough confidence that they'll play the Chiefs in Kansas City and be fine. They'll play the Packers in Green Bay and be fine. They're not scared of anybody anywhere. No. That's the type of courage you get when you win a Super Bowl, and they definitely have it right now.
Absolutely. I'm watching that on Monday night, and I was hoping they would show you on camera. I was waiting for Bob Cam. I never saw that, but It made me want to go more. But I also, this relates to the next thing we're going to talk about. They showed, some scenes around Lambeau, but also outside Lambeau, and gosh, I'm going to screw up the name. Timeout Bar, something that's just down the street, whatever it is.
Yeah.
The famous bar, the sports bar. And they showed the stereotypical Packer fans, and, the cameras going down the aisle, and everyone's, hey, let's go Pack, let's go Pack. And I think Green Bay's really unique in that the ownership is to the fans. And when I was growing up, the Packers, this was after Lombardi, they were ridiculous in the 70s and the early 80s, and really until Favre got there. But I just thought of, man, that is a team that still has the trust and the love of its fan base and its community. So now we relate it to another sports story where we're from, Dallas-Fort Worth. And the Mavericks parted ways with Nico Harrison, and his last 9 months were some of the wildest days in Dallas Mavericks history, from trading Luka to saying that this was going to be a team all about defense, and, hey, watch this as we build this team around Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving. And then, of course, they get hurt and they miss the playoffs, and they somehow win the lottery. And the whole thing is just insane. But the Mavericks, I think it's safe to say, have lost the trust of their fan base. They have lost the trust of their public. Could that ever happen to the Cowboys, Are we getting to that? Are they taking some steps towards that? The opinion of Jerry Jones is not very high around town and around this state. That comment a couple of weeks ago about him being more concerned about a gas well than he was about fixing the defense
Yeah.
didn't fly real well. I still think they're a long way from where the Mavericks are right now, which is just a dumpster fire. But it's a delicate thing, isn't it? That trust of your fan base. And, yeah, they didn't do it this year, but by God, I believe in LaFleur. I believe in Love, and I believe in now Micah Parsons, and they're going to do it one of these days. But, man, if you ever get to that point where they say it's never going to happen, and I guess some Cowboy fans are close to that now. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a million things there. This feels like the premise of a book almost. It's such a exhaustive discussion, but I think it's a great one. And I guess my takeaway from the entire conversation, as it applies from the Mavs to the Cowboys, is I think the story of the Mavericks finally firing their general manager that so upset the city. I think that is maybe not completely, but primarily because the fans never let it go. The fans, I've
never seen anything like it. It's just like
yes,
the mob mentality was just off the charts.
yes, and I think mob in a reasonable way. I think obviously worldwide mobs can be very, very scary and they can go way too far. And I think in this case, these fans just were upset that they felt, and I agree with them, that the public trust was broken between a team and its public. And I think to me that's my big takeaway. And George, it may be a pie in the sky, it may not be real life, but in my opinion, in my personal opinion, and again, this might be because Bob was born in Wisconsin, but I believe that the fans own the team. And I know we don't. I know that's untrue, but also true. And what I mean by that is you don't have a franchise if you don't have fans. You absolutely rely on us. Now, it might be $100 at a time. It might be $10 at a time, but you rely on us to provide the fuel for the entire thing, the entire whatever this is of a franchise running. You need us. And I think we lose sight of that because they are so rich and so removed from, the 400 level at the AT&T Stadium that we sometimes think that they're inviting us into their home and we're their guest and we need to be courteous and we need to accept whatever they serve for dinner and be thankful. And I just don't think it's like that, George. I think we are part of the deal. We are the they're the stewards. How about that? They are the caretakers of a franchise, but they do not own it in the sense that they can do whatever they want and not feel the effects of our unrest. And so I believe the story of the Mavs fans not letting something go and ultimately getting what they demanded is very similar. Texas A&M had a situation a couple years ago where they fired a coach. They wanted to hire somebody else, and the fans revolted. Now, did they revolt in terms of did they burn buildings? No. But they were very, very, very upset and very, very, very loud, and they didn't let it go. And the university did not hire Mark Stoops because their fans lost their minds.
Yeah.
And I don't know where the line is. And I also know it's a fine line of not letting fans decide who the starting quarterback is because that's insane. But you owe it to your public to be serious as a franchise to try to provide an experience that we're willing to pay into. And so how does that apply to the Cowboys? I think it's a great discussion, and I think it's one that, I when people say, how did the Mavericks fans pull this off, they just never let it go. And people say, well, would that work with the Cowboys? My thought on that, George, and I think I've said this to you in Oxnard, is that, you know what's crazy? As upset as Cowboy fans seem to be over the years, I've never seen a single fan protest. Not one.
Mm-mm.
Not even to the scale of those fans who had the Fire Nico signs and rallies like on the plaza outside the Mavericks arena last spring. And that was maybe only a couple hundred people with signs and chants. But I've never seen that with the Cowboys. All I see is they open the doors and everybody sprints to their
Can't
spot
wait.
every game. They can't wait to give Jerry Jones and his family all of their money. And it's such a compliant fan base. And I don't really understand
I
what
don't
it would
either.
take to upset Cowboy fans enough to say, we demand a real general manager, or we demand A, or we're not going to ever do B again. As you know, the Cowboys Stadium never lacks for customers, and they make that family very rich, and that behavior reinforces that family's actions that they have never made a wrong turn in their life.
Well, and that's why I was a little more cynical on the trades to bring players like Quinnen Williams to town. Yes, I understand it's about 26 and 27, but not to the guy who owns the team. The worst thing that could possibly happen is the Cowboys lose out and they go through, a season where they only win 4 games or 5 games. If they can win 6 or 7, that's enough for Jerry to not only get people in,
Yes.
but sell futures for next year. Hey, we didn't make it, but we're fixing this defense. We got draft picks now that we're going to use, and to always keep that machine going. And yeah, it's I know some people are out, but not enough. Not enough for people to stay away from the stadium. And if the Cowboy fans stay away, that schedule comes out, and whoever is on it will buy the remaining tickets.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, that comment from the Wall Street Journal a week or two ago, honestly, that's the biggest litmus test to the fear that an owner has running this franchise. Because even if you're joking, and okay, he was joking, let's say that he's more interested in $100 billion, potential gas or oil, land, sweepstakes than fixing the Cowboys defense. Ha ha ha. I just think in a situation where an owner understands how serious people take this, and again, I'm going to point to the United Kingdom and the way those people run their soccer franchises. They understand this is not a joking matter. This is these people of who support our soccer club. They do not joke about our team being bad, and they do not joke about. So there's a respect. There's a healthy respect that I own this thing, and I may have access to a private jet and a helicopter, but I am your servant, the public. I am here to do what's best because I owe it to you guys who love this franchise more than I ever could because you were born here. This is all you're going to make sure your grandkids love this soccer club. That's how they do it over there. And over here, it's kind of this insulated life where we don't owe the fans a single thing, and you should be happy that we even sell you a ticket. And
Yeah.
I just think that's wrong, and that's why what the Mavs fans did is they took action and they got the attention of the ownership group. And again, I realize there have to be decorum limits to what we're willing to do to get their attention. We still have to treat them respectfully as humans, but we don't have to fill their pockets year after year after year after year and just pledge allegiance to them. I also don't believe in walking away and just letting them do whatever they want. And that's what some people do just to, have peace of mind is just, okay, I'm not a Cowboy fan anymore. I believe in hanging in there with your franchise, but demanding a better behavior because this is not your franchise. This is our franchise. You just hold the deed right now. And so, I find, heck, it's even interesting, George, that Mavericks fans and Cowboy fans are often the same human. So why do we stand idly by with the football team? Because by all accounts, people care more about the football team than they do about any other franchise in this area. But they're also so compliant to the Jones family that it is his team. I guess if he wants to be GM, I guess that's cool.
Yeah.
And I just think, man, I don't know what you do, George. Seriously. But I do know I've never seen one fan protest.
No.
One in all these years.
No.
Followed them for 3 decades, and every Cowboy fan I know is sick and tired of Cowboy football underachieving in this generation. And yet they can't do 1/10 of what Mavericks fans just did and just got accomplished, and I just find that puzzling.
Yeah, and I thought they would take more backlash on the Micah deal, and they have taken some, but not a lot.
Most people take their side.
Yes, and back to the story of our sons. My youngest son, his middle name is Landry. He's almost sworn off the team, and just is convinced that it's never going to happen. He's of my 3 sons, he's the one who still believes a little. He still wants it for them. And maybe it's because his middle name is Landry. I don't know. But he still roots for him. But, even he called me in August after Micah was dealt and said, Dad, if I was 10 years old, between Luka and Micah, I would be crying in my closet right now.
That's right.
as it relates to Maverick and Cowboy fans who just got kicked in the pants.
That's right.
Twice in a matter of months. So there is some correlation there. If Jerry took any advice from me, and by the way, I have talked business with Jerry before. Granted, one of the times was like 1 o'clock in the morning in New Orleans, but he and I have had interesting conversations off air before.
Right.
If I could offer him any sort of advice, and who knows, the people in Atlanta may think Arthur Blank is ridiculous, and I've seen them, torch him on social media about how bad the Falcons are. But you know what? At least when you go to the Dome in Atlanta, you don't pay $10 for a soft drink.
Right.
You pay almost like Masters prices. I think it's $2. They are the lowest priced concession team in the NFL. And I know Jerry has his own catering company, but
how about parking?
How about parking? How about tickets?
I park at Lambeau for $20?
Yes.
You could not even dream of parking at AT&T Stadium for less than 60, probably 100.
It's over 100, most of it. The tickets are outrageous. I think it would go a long way if he said, you know what, this has been substandard here the last 30 years. I have tried my best, but he doesn't have to say this publicly, but this is a play for getting the public's trust back. Lower ticket prices, lower concessions, lower parking. Give an ear to mass transit to games. Yeah, that makes some sense. So my fans don't have to pay $100 so they can ride a bus from Dallas and get here. That would go a long way, and I think he ought to think about it, because if this keeps up, they are teetering on the worst nightmare for professional sports, and that is just what you said, losing your fans' trust.
Yeah, and for me, just to go back to the Mavericks lesson perhaps we learned here is just, to me, there has to be an accountability. And that's all we're talking about here. I don't believe for a second that fans can get an owner to sell the team.
No.
I just think that's probably silly. Okay, so I understand you're not going to get the Jones family to sell the team. You're not going to get the Adelson family to sell the team unless they want to. And usually the only time they want to is either when they need money or they feel like they've multiplied the value to a point where it's time to cash out. And I just don't think Jerry Jones has that on his radar at all. That said, there are positions about the football team, and general manager, it might be the most important one, even more important than the head coach, where there has to be an accountability, where if somebody does not do their job at a requisite level, we can demand change based on facts. And I think the demand for change at the general manager position that the owner placed himself in charge of and has pretty much said there is no amount of failure that could ever get me off of this until God calls me home, basically. I will be the general manager. And to me, that kind of is what I'm talking about here, with no accountability and no
Yeah.
sort of obligation to your public as a steward of a franchise, that I want what's best for all of you, not for my personal ego. And so I do think that the instructive lesson to be learned from the Mavericks fans, who, like I said, are largely the same humans, to be able to get together and unify and at least be heard at games, or once a year, of, please, sir, if it pleases you, would you consider finding the best personnel expert and using your infinite money to get him onto your team and to hold meetings with you about what he thinks you should do. And you, by the way, as owner, you can still be the shadow GM. You can still
To
do
be at the press conferences and all that.
yes,
Yeah.
you can still do all of that. But just please accept some advice from somebody with their butt on the line, that you got this decision correct, and that would make everybody look at you in a different light. But as far as I'm concerned, George, why would he ever listen to me if his own fans who grew up
Yeah.
here have just sort of complied to his every whim over these years? That it's Jerry's team, I guess he gets to do what he wants to do with it. Man, I don't think so. I think you fans, this is your team. This is and you are empowered, if you choose to accept the power, to be heard that you are upset. And sending emails to radio show hosts does not get you nearly as far as something as profound as chanting "Fire Nico" in your own arena as a group. That actually works over the course of time if you don't give in. But I kind of think Cowboy fans have given in and given up on this particular topic, and it just seemed like a good time to talk about it.
Yeah, that was an interesting, very interesting conversation. All right, we need to talk about the Raiders. Bob's going to Las Vegas. Let's
Oh, my
talk about
gosh.
that matchup on the Musers, the podcast Cowboys edition, in just a moment. Okay, Cowboys and Raiders on Monday Night Football in Las Vegas. Bob is actually going to be in the house.
Yes.
Award-winning afternoon show that he works on is going to be there, and that's pretty cool. I've seen that stadium, haven't seen a game there. Have you been to that stadium yet to see a game?
No, same as you. I've
Okay.
taken the tour. I have I like it enough, but yeah, I've never been to Las Vegas for a game. So let's make it happen on Monday night.
Well, they see a Raiders team that has fallen on really hard times. They only have 2 wins. They somehow almost knocked off Denver before falling 10-7. Lost in overtime to Jacksonville. Got annihilated by Kansas City. They got annihilated by Indianapolis back when we thought that's not that great a team, and turns out that was a tougher opponent than we thought. Lost a crazy game against the Bears. In other words, they've been close, and I guess their most impressive win is they beat the Patriots. They were one of 2 teams that has beaten the Patriots this year.
Yeah.
But they've got a quarterback who's thrown more interceptions than touchdowns. If you watch the Raiders most of this season, you look at them and think they stink.
Yeah, and it's kind of the same old on why they stink. Going back to they just can't get their offense right, and this has been going on a while, and it's certainly gone from quarterback to quarterback and head coach to head coach and OC to OC, and it's been a while since they've been good, and so they spent a very, very high pick last year on an offensive piece in Brock Bowers, and he appears to be a stud, but it hasn't quite moved this giant ship in a different direction. So then they spent another really high pick on a running back in Ashton Genty, and we believe him to be a generational type talent. But that has been some very tough sledding again. It does look like, once again, the value of an offense is largely found up front in its offensive line, and that remains an issue. Quarterback remains an issue. They hired Pete Carroll. I mean, they got a lot going on, George. Their defense is not bad, but it's more of a not bad than a really good defense. But it's all held back because the offense just struggles at literally everything all the time.
Do you know offhand, do they move Max Crosby around? Do they put him right side, left side, or they always put him on the blind side?
I believe he is generally against the right tackle, and
Okay.
and I think he might move around a little bit, but from my initial pass at his stuff, it feels like usually he would be going up against the Terrence Steele, Nate Thomas right tackle spot, which gets everybody excited.
That's okay. Yeah, that's right. From the offense is right, and I think that could be a problem. And on the other side, yeah, they've had offensive problems, but I'm sure as they turn on the tape, as we've said probably a half dozen times this year, oh, okay. Dallas's defense has some problems. I think we can do something here.
Yeah.
But now you factor in Quinnen Williams. How much does he play? How much does Logan Wilson play?
Right.
The long-awaited return of DeMarvion Overshone. I think he'll be sprinkled in Monday.
I do too.
And tell me about Siobhan Ravel. I've heard his name said about 8 different ways, but I think that's how we're saying it, right?
Yeah,
right
either
on
Siobhan or Savan. I'm a little bit dicey on that one, totally, George. But I really liked him.
And I've heard Revel and Ravel, so
yeah,
very mysterious corner. But seeing what I've seen of him, his college tape is really, really good. He's coming off of a knee injury.
Yeah.
I wonder how much he plays against the Raiders.
Yeah, well, I will tell you, when looking at his college profile from East Carolina, my takeaway was he's everything I look for in an NFL corner, with great size and speed, as well as that great length, and more importantly, he is willing to find contact and aggressiveness, and he just plays a corner in a way you'll really like. He wants to get after you and tackle you with force, and he has recovery speed and instincts for the ball. The issues, though, are that he has been hurt, and this is a big thing, of course, in our professional sports. Is durability is sometimes tough to come by, and so he couldn't really take part in the draft process because of an ACL recovery, and he had a couple high school injuries that were a big deal. He was even in a car accident, and so there are plenty of things that say he's got to get on the field, and then his play style takes a toll. So I don't know how much you remember his personal story, but he was working at Amazon overnights, and this was a guy who was almost out of football, but he tried out for East Carolina, and upon trying out, and this is because of a car accident in high school that kind of took him out of the recruiting process, and so he tried out for East Carolina and ended up a success story there, and kind of worked his way up through the back channels of not being a 5-star and not being a golden boy, and having people doubting him. So he's got great quality as like a human, and so this, when you talk about culture, these are the types of guys you're looking for. But he still hasn't been on the field, and so you say first round value, we got it in the 3rd round, but this is why, because here we are this late in the season, and we don't even know how to say his name yet, and that's not a great sign so far. But I mean, look, this whole game to me is about getting to look at how this defense appears now. Again, if we may take it all the way back to the tragedy they're dealing with, and the fact that they just added Quinnen Williams and Logan Wilson, and so they're all learning each other's names, and so for us to expect a drastic difference from the defense is probably a little optimistic. But yeah, you could have like 5 new starters, maybe maybe 6 new regulars on this defense if you start going through it. And George, I want to be on the lookout for even some signs of playing a 3-4 with a 5-man front.
Yeah.
I kind of wonder if the idea is to get Osa Odigizua, Kenny Clark, and Quinnen Williams all kind of across the front like a 3-4, and
Put
then
Quinnen over the center.
Yeah, and then you might have like Ezaraku as a stand-up on one side, and Dante Fowler or Jadeveon Clowney as a stand-up on the other side, and you kind of play a 50 front or a 34 or however you want to say it. Now, again, nickel is base in the NFL, and so the idea that we need to account for 7 up front in a 3-4 or a 4-3 is probably just a first down thing, if at all. They probably will have a 5-man front on running downs and then sort of shift to the normal 42 with a nickel behind it on passing downs, which is the majority of what we see in the NFL. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't want to get lost in the weeds on a scheme change, especially mid-season. But as we look to the spring where you get 2 first-round picks that, as of right now, look like they both might even be in the top 20, we have to start imagining a defense for 2026. It starts Monday night, but as into 2026, what scheme, what coordinator? I know Jerry is acting like Eberflus is his guy no matter what next year, but I think we can take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
But it all starts here in Las Vegas as to what this Cowboys defense looks like, and that's really the story of what can Quinnen Williams do right away to make us realize he is a blue chip piece that this team really hasn't had in the middle of their defense in a long, long time.
Well, and there's something about Cowboys-Raiders, too. It takes you back to that magical decade of the 70s, and the Raiders won a lot of games under John Madden and Kenny Stabler, stayed relevant in the 80s, and there really was a greatness to the Raiders. Now, there hasn't been in a while, but I think anytime you have that matchup, Cowboys-Raiders, most NFL fans perk up and go, okay. Yeah, I'll watch that on a Monday night.
Yeah, I don't know if ESPN would select this game as their feature game right now, but yeah, when
nostalgic. There's nostalgia in the air when these two teams play. If
there is,
else.
and somehow the Raiders can keep that brand value despite the fact that they never really spend 10 years in the same city at any point as they go from Oakland to LA, back to Oakland, now to Las Vegas. But they're probably going to be here for a long, long time in Las Vegas, and yeah, it's a game that will get a lot of neutrals to the TV, at least for the first hour, and I assume we can actually get some first half points this week, unlike what I saw last week, and we go from there. So yeah, it'll be fun. I'm excited to see it, and you know, this second half to me of the season is probably more of an exercise in getting your franchise right for what lies ahead. But I do admit, Overshown, Ravel, Quinnen Williams, Logan Wilson, you can feel the newness of just a drop of optimism on, you know, can we get this defense sorted out so that we can hit the ground running in this offseason, and you know, again, add 2 more studs on draft day and see about where it takes us.
Well, I'm going to write it down. I'm going to watch this game on Monday night, Bob.
That's a
and
great
you're going to
idea.
be there. And field access again? Should I look for you in the pregame show, walking around and hobnobbing on the field, or
I'm not gonna bother Troy again. So if I can figure it out another way, I'll be down there and I'll try to wear like a giant cheese head so you know who it is.
Yeah,
but
do that.
But no, you know, those people are the worst, right? The third party uniform guy at an NFL game.
Oh, I know.
And by the way, Packers fans are the worst at that. They'll go to any game in any stadium and they'll wear their Packer jerseys. And I would just like to say, as an owner of the Packers, I discourage that sort of thing.
If you're
not playing in the game, we don't need to see your Favre jersey if they're not playing in the game. So
another public service announcement from my man Bob Sturm
from Football Friends.
Football Friends. Well, thanks to Peter Welton and Ty Wubker producing this show today, Bob.
Wow,
this show was double strong with both of those good gentlemen helping us out with the show. We'll see what happens in Cowboys and Raiders, and we'll be back next week to talk about Cowboy football here on the Musers, the podcast, Cowboys edition, Football Friends. Yay. Yay.